6 o'clock, I'll call the board meeting to order. First thing we do is a pledge. Rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Lori, if you could take attendance, I'd appreciate that.
Christopher Abel.
Here.
David Bowman.
Here.
Biff Hansen.
Here.
Dan Holson. Here. Mary Wolfe Blahnik.
Present.
Keith Shaw.
Here.
Carrie Trapp.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And first order of business is the personnel report from Michael. Correct?
You want me to speak to it a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
Stacy O'Polly has been recommended as the next Director of Human Resources. As you can see from there, Stacy was a former employee with the Manitowoc School District at Jefferson Elementary for a number of years, and then went over to Madison Elementary for a number of years. Left the district to go to CESA 7 and became a director at CESA 7, and now is going to be returning, hopefully pending board approval, returning to the district on July 1. Nathan Milkey is being recommended as our next Director of Business Services. And Nathan has been a Director of Technology with the Marquette University High School for the last few years. Was really into IT, and as a director before that, I think it was in Hartford High School, Union High School. He has a MBA, master's degree, with an emphasis in finance. He's about 3 classes away from his, what we say is 08 license, his Director of Business Services license. So I think we have the documents on your desk right now, Mr. Hank, you can sign. He will be getting a 1-year board-approved license, and then he'll complete his proper certification within 1 year. And then the third recommendation tonight on your agenda is Lainey Longmire, who's currently an assistant principal at Lincoln High School, who's been with the district, I think about 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Came in as a special education teacher, and then went to a dean at the high school, then got promoted to an assistant principal at the high school, and now is being recommended for the Washington Middle School principalship.
Are we voting on this tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As Michael was explaining the 3 candidates, they're all very well qualified, and my comments right now are not aimed at any of them, but we have this thing, we introduce candidates before they get board approval. And we're trying to think of a better way to do that. They've already gone through the process of being interviewed. The superintendent has picked them out. Whoever interviewed, that group that interviewed made a good decision and picked good people. And to say now pending board approval, it kind of doesn't make sense to do it that way. So my wish will be that the Policy and Personnel Committee look through that to come up with a better way, that there would be some board approval, or board input, board approval in the future before somebody would be introduced as the new HR director, and then all of a sudden the board starts discussing, we don't necessarily want that person for some weird reason. I just think it's important to get this down the right order. I don't really remember, and maybe those of you that have been on the board a longer time can remember the board. I know the board interviewed me when I was going to be an assistant principal at Lincoln. But I'm not sure there's really a board input place. Not that we need it, but I think we need to discuss that. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. And I couldn't more strongly share your concerns. In fact, it was fully my intention to, had nobody moved to approve these, request that these 3 recommendations be moved to the Personnel Committee to look at this month. And I have a couple of reasons for that, and I will move that. But I agree with you, and I think a better process, and I think a fundamental process for principals on up should be staff brings the board their top recommendations. They may be 2, they may be 3. We just went through a very careful, very public process to choose our superintendent so that everybody knew who we were looking at and how qualified they are. What we got for these 3 candidates is the blurbs on today's report and the press release for who has been selected. And honestly, that doesn't give us time to develop questions that, frankly, I have questions that I will not ask in public because they are questions that could be injurious to a person's reputation. So I would ask that it go back there and it have a closed session as well. But I would say in the future, bring their top tier candidates for the board to consider, because the truth is, by law, the board hires everybody. In this district, we literally hire everybody, right down to the parapros. In a lot of districts, it's all licensed people.
Right.
That's state law.
I would agree with that. However, we hire a superintendent, and that superintendent then has a process that he hires the people that he needs within the district. And if we don't like those choices, I guess I'm looking for an opportunity through personnel policy to develop a way that the board would have more input. But for me to say tonight that the job was not a good job, and we did kick around the idea of having a closed session to discuss this if anybody had a concern, because bringing out a concern in public I don't think is appropriate. But the other part of that is the attorney told us that that would not be something you could do in a closed session. So we didn't go that route, and hopefully from this point on, we would come up with a better way. Keith?
I think it's a good idea to discuss this in policy and personnel. I think that these three people that have been presented have been appointed. I think that we can take a look at that in policy and personnel. I think it needs to be discussed. In all of my dealings in all the years of education, the superintendent can move any administrator he or she wants to within any time and within any building, and that comes to the board that the superintendent moves a person in the district at his or her will. I don't really think that needs to be discussed. That's their responsibility to move administrators to wherever they think they're the most effective, so be it. But I do concur that there could be some language with directors that are hired to have some conversation. But for this time being tonight, I'm making a motion that we approve the personnel report because I think it's been appointed, it's done, it's gone public, and how can we keep these individuals hanging on the board anymore, hanging in jeopardy that we're not going to approve their position? So I make the motion to approve the personnel report.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. I have a second from Ann.
You mean we can't talk about the thing that was being discussed before now?
Well, that will go to personnel. What if Chris would like to amend what we just moved to happen?
No, we can discuss the policy and the procedures and personnel. But I'm saying,
All right,
for
we'll do
purposes
that.
of this,
That's
we
for
usually
sure we'll do
accept the
that.
personnel report.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion on approving this report and then approving these hires, correct?
No, I'm making a motion to approve, nothing to do with what we're taking to personnel.
Right.
I'm
Right.
You're
moving
moving.
I'm moving to
Right.
approve the personnel report.
Okay, and I hang on, I want some clarification, and if we approve the personnel report, that approves
Yeah.
these
Yeah,
things.
then
Okay.
we approve
I just
these
want to make sure we
people,
do that.
yeah.
All right, any other discussion on that?
Just real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I'll be voting no because I agree that the way we're currently doing it puts the board in a box. And we are the representatives of the people. We are the last check for who we hire. And I think we need a more thorough process to make our decisions.
I want to say I'll be voting in favor of the motion, but having come through another administration that had a buddy system and got us some awful, awful people, I do think that you know, procedures should be established in which at least the board has the opportunity to object. before the people were offered the job. I mean, I don't have to describe, what we went through a
Right.
couple of years ago. And I just think that, come on, we gotta be like kind of collaborative on this, as is stressed in some of the goals for ahead. And I think it's, yeah, so I think, I definitely am gonna put this on the agenda for the.
Good.
I already seconded the motion, but in lieu of some other policy that we would like to talk about in personnel and finance, or personnel and policy, I feel that, yes, it was a short word. I think we got more out of the press release or the communication to the schools than we did here. I concur, they sound like very good candidates.
Yeah.
We do have to trust our directors, the people that we hired as superintendents. That, I feel, is our role, not to hire everyone.
Anybody else?
Mr. Hanson, may I just interject?
Yes.
Whatever way you want to do this is fine, but what I will say is, if we are going to move to a system in which it must go through the board before we offer a position, then we're going to need to call some special meetings, because this labor market, you're going to need to be ready on a drop of a hat on a number of times, because we need to get the best people here. And what I would just tell you is, in my view, your role is to hire and fire me. So if I make
Yeah, that's
mistakes
true.
in hiring, you should fire me for that. So that's my position on it. In many districts, it's done that way. Lastly, I'll just say, if we are going to move to a system in that way, I would just be concerned about getting quorums when we have to come together in a very quick manner to approve people. I do think there's much validity in the idea of communicating things in the right order. And if the board has concerns about how things were done here, I think it's a matter of coming up with a system of how we make sure we communicate things in the right order. But in terms of having to hold on to offer people positions, that really puts us in a tough spot.
I call the question, that what we're discussing isn't about the
Yeah,
motion.
we'll discuss this later, yeah.
So it'll go to policy and we'll have the discussions there. Send everybody at that meeting. All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
And it passes. And I think we have two good new people and one that's moving on to another job. So that'll be good for the district. All right. That is all of that business. Now we go into the work session and I will turn it over to Lee for this.
Yeah, very excited about tonight. Visions are an important part of making sure an organization is going to reach its full potential. And it starts with having a very clear and strategic plan, complete with measurable goals, which are essential to any organization. It serves as the foundation for our focused decision makings, continuous improvement, and meaningful impact. Our team is genuinely excited about the opportunity to partner with the board in launching the development of a strategic vision for the Manitowoc Public School District. This vision will guide our collective efforts over the next 3 to 5 years and help shape the future of our schools and our community. Tonight marks the first step in that journey. This is a working session of the board, which means the format will differ slightly from typical meetings. There'll be no motions or formal votes. Instead, this evening is about dialogue, collaboration, and feedback. Our goal is to present the initial visioning work completed by our administrative teams and gather your insights and reactions. Your feedback will help us refine a final strategic vision document, which we plan to present for formal approval on June 10th. Once the strategic vision is established, our focus over the summer months of June, July, and August will be on translating that vision into action. We'll develop a series of 100-day plans, each with clearly defined goals, timelines, and measurable outcomes. These plans will be brought to the appropriate standing committees of the board for review and approval. Following each 100-day cycle, we'll report back to the committees, share data, progress, and lessons learned. We'll then seek approval to move forward with the next 100-day plan. The cycle ensures that our work is both transparent and accountable, and that we're consistently moving toward a better future in each of our priority areas. The document you'll see tonight provides a high-level 30,000-foot view of our 7 key priority areas, what we are calling our big rocks, or priorities. The detailed goals and performance indicators will come later, embedded in the 100-day plans that we bring to you in the coming months. Each big rock will be represented by a lead administrator who will facilitate a brief discussion. After each presentation, we will invite board members to provide feedback using note sheets that are at your places. These sheets include specific spaces for comments, questions, or concerns related to each priority area. Our team will do our best to respond to your questions and ensure your perspectives are reflected in the final version of the plan. With your partnership, we're confident this strategic planning process will provide a strong and steady compass for our district's voyage moving forward. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Heidi, who will start with number 1, student achievement and learning outcomes.
Okay, so to start out, I just want to give you a couple minutes, and you probably have, but even if you have before, take a minute to peruse that first paragraph, and then we'll talk about the bullets. Okay, having read the paragraph, I just want to give you, just to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page, just some examples of some things that we've done recently or that we're talking about doing for each of the bullets underneath. We kind of pulled the bullets out as some of the things that within that paragraph that we know will be priorities for us. So just an example of the high quality curriculum and instruction and technology. One of the things that we've done in the last couple of years is just making sure that we're using a curriculum implementation cycle so that we are making sure that every one of our subject areas has a current curriculum that's relevant for today's students and has current resources. So that's just an example of something that's new in the last couple of years that we're doing. Supporting data-driven decision-making. We have had pockets of professional development for admin and staff on PLCs over the last many years where we've sent a principal or maybe one teacher, and we are feeling like we're just not getting off the ground with only those little tiny pockets of people getting the professional development. So this summer, Katie and I, we were fortunate enough to go to an amazing training last month from Solution Tree, and we will be presenting that training to our principals and significant numbers of staff from each school, up to 15 staff members, with the goal of having every grade level and every subject area at the high school represented at that training so that we can feel like, okay, we've got the training out there and now we can move forward. So that is something that we're excited about doing. Closing achievement gaps and promoting equity this past summer, or we're having a data retreat this summer. I was going to say something else about this and I changed my mind. This summer we're having a data retreat with our admin team and building leadership teams, and we haven't had a really strategic data retreat in MPSD in my time that we've been here, where we have our principals and they're bringing their leadership team. We're collaborating with CISA 7 to help us to make that just the most meaningful data that can be, where we're digging into data, looking for those gaps. That's going to be a strong piece of that work, is looking for those achievement gaps and figuring out, what we're going to do about those gaps. Intervention and enrichment programs is something we've done a lot of work, and yet there's still so much more to do. We do have intervention as a stronger course is intervention. Enrichment is something that we know we need to continue to grow. But we have a solid intervention program in place at the elementary level. Middle school now has identified ELA and math intervention that they have And the high school is getting started with that work as well. So we have a really good foundation for that work, and we know we have more to do. I think that's probably professional development for administrators and teachers is ongoing. We are really focused on our PD days, bringing in people from CISA, offering things from our own leadership teams. Again, that's stuff that we need to just continue to grow. Yes.
Okay. This is not, despite the way I say it, this is not jokey jokey,
Okay.
okay?
All right.
Going all the way back to Marcia Flaherty, we've had PLCs.
Yes.
Are they so complicated that it's taking us over a decade and a half to do them? Or what are we looking at to figure out why they're not being successful? Some people do them very well. I'm not painting it, but if we're always going back to say we're going to teach people how to do PLCs, and we've been doing it for over a decade, I have to say, where's the problem with that? That's one of two questions I have.
We've never had a district-wide training, like where everybody heard the same thing, and I do think that helps. I feel like PLCs, what's hard about that is lots of people are really good at planning together and getting together and talking about what they're going to be doing in the next week's lessons. And that is what a lot of people default to, because PLC is hard. You have to have fresh data that you're looking at. You have to use your time really well. One of our challenges, especially at the elementary, is that we don't give our staff time to do that work. We ask them to give up their prep time in order to do the PLC work, because they still have to cut stuff out and they still have to get things ready for the little people that are in front of them all day. So I do think it's complicated. I don't think we've had a quality professional development that would be enough to get it off the ground, in the sense of lots of people hearing the same message.
I think that was our takeaway when Heidi and I were fortunate enough, like she said, to attend some training. It was sort of an aha moment for us, because the PLC training can be pretty general. And I think we all know you should be collaborating with your peers, we should be talking about kids, we should be looking at data, we should be informing our instructional practices or adjusting them based on what students need. And I think that, with an analogy in a conversation that I had with one of our Lincoln High School APs is that our plane is built, it's all ready to go, it's in the hangar, the door is open to the runway, and we just don't necessarily have a pilot. So part of the training that we've had is really next steps. And so I think we came to the board and asked for out-of-state travel to take a small group of leaders from every building to go to Madison. After we had this training, we recanted that because we don't need the overview anymore. We need the dial mover. And so the tools and resources that we'll be able to share with our building leaders now are rubrics for assessment for building administrators to go in and see specifically where on a proficiency rubric based on actionable items our staff are in having conversations, because to your point, everybody's at a little bit different place. So we've got some teams that are super strong in PLCing and using student data, and they're seeing the fruits of that labor. And then we have other teams that, because it requires so much vulnerability in those conversations and it requires a level of trust that they just haven't gotten there. So now we'll give our leaders and our building principals tools to go in and really determine where our teams are at. And then it also, these resources give actionables for now. Your team is identified as here. This is what you need to do to get to proficient. So we're excited to be able to share those resources with you as well, because it was sort of like us sitting there going like, this is what we need. So it felt good, but this I think will be the dial mover. So it'll be good to share with you.
And my second thing is I'm not asking for a zillion bullets, so I apologize for asking for another bullet, but it would be nice to see something on here about clear grade level academic goals.
Yeah.
Since that's something the board actually has to approve every.
Seems like that might be an action plan, 100
Like a KPI kind of.
It might be more in in the weeds a little bit than what we wanted to present
Okay.
here today, but I think I'm writing that down right now.
Sure. Is this the plan now to ask questions or?
So here's what we're hoping to do.
Okay.
So if you have questions for clarification, in other words, you're not quite getting what this means, or if you have to ask a question for clarification, that would be now. If it's not about clarification and it's just a general question, we'll get to it. But we'd like to have some dialogue between board members to discuss a little bit. So does anybody have any clarifying questions about the first one? Okay, so then,
That's all we get to do.
oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was curious because in number 3, and I know I'm jumping, but it's on purpose. Number 3 references your MLSS. Why wasn't that built into number 1? And I think it might be because like targeted supports and intervention, I see the words, but it's not called out. And I thought it was interesting that we call it out related to behavior and
I think the
SEL,
nuance is different.
but we didn't call it out related to academic. So perhaps just some rewording. Thank you, ladies.
I don't know, I see 3 as fundamentally different focus.
Very much.
But so, I guess I'd like to keep them clean but, I mean, we did get to it in 3.
Yep.
So why
But
do
in
we
number
need,
3,
why do we
the
need,
MLSS is supporting.
why do we need a
behavior.
hybrid in 1?
I'm not asking for a hybrid.
Oh, okay.
MLSS, there are targeted supports in place to improve behavior. There should also be targeted supports in place to improve academics. So a true MLSS integrates, right?
It
Yeah, I
does.
like
It-
that.
Things we're doing with.
It does, and you're right, we basically describe components of the MLSS,
Didn't
but
call it out.
we just don't have it called out.
And knowing that you are working with your group this summer to do the data retreat, beef up MLSS, I think calling it out in area 1 here adds some accountability to yourselves and to our staff to really use that new system that you're developing. So I'm not critical of what you are planning. I think it's spot on. I want some language added.
Yep.
And you're both nodding, so
We are,
strongly agree.
agreed totally.
Thank you, ladies.
Yes.
Yeah, when I read this, I thought, well, gee, haven't we been doing this stuff? And the answer is like, no, we haven't. We haven't been doing it systematically, and we haven't been doing it, kind of across the district. But what occurred to me is maybe something that will come later, but I remember there was a dean in the UW colleges who kept stressing on, results education, that we should have goals and we should have standards and we should be shooting for getting from here to there. And I think what we have in 1, and maybe in all of them, is kind of a statement of philosophy and a statement of a process. But we don't have any indication of what the goals of the process are.
That'll be part of the 100-day plan.
That'll be part of the
Yeah, So
100
then
day.
you'll have measurable goals that will align with each of
Okay,
these
yeah.
areas, and then that's what we'll be reporting.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Just a question on, so it's, the way I'm reading this, the main target of success or the main emphasis is cultivating these PLCs. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's
So that's in paragraph 1 and that,
it's a way to get there.
okay.
It is a way to get, it is one of the most heavily researched and shown to make a difference for moving kids.
So in that 100-day plan,
There are
things like
details.
who's doing it well, because what I'm hearing is it sounds like you kind of know what you need to do, it's just not culture yet.
Yeah, that's
So
sort of, that's
who's
true.
doing it the best? Because I just toured a school and I asked, what do you think you're doing well? And that was the answer I got, was the PLCs. So I guess, will that be part of the 100-day plan? And how do you make it that culture by, hey, these people who have embraced it and love it and can sell it, that's what's going to be in there?
Yes, and I think that the rubric process that we're gonna be sharing with principals this summer, and it's like, it's a rubric, but it's like, here we are in this rubric, and this group that we just observed right now, this is where they're at, and it gives principals the language to give the feedback to move them just to that next spot. And that is what we've been missing a lot, is for principals to be able to observe PLC and give them the feedback to get them to that next space, because, so.
It seems like the A word, accountability, is coming into play.
Yeah.
Which is much needed.
Yeah, agreed.
That's a theme in the whole document.
The A word?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah, that's okay. So, there's good dialogue happening, and I'm comfortable if it's the whole group instead of pairing off. So if you want to be, that was that, but it's fine. It seems like the dialogue's going fine. So, I mean, if you want to just continue with your questions, comments, and concerns in general on number 1, and then when we've exhausted those, we can move on to number 2.
okay. So PLC, the ones that are doing well, you walk into a school and they go, we're doing a great job. How do they know that? How do they know that they're one of the good PLC schools and they're actually effective in what they're doing?
Hopefully they know that because their kids are moving. So I think that's the first thing. It's not just that we have this process and we're doing this process well, but you've got student growth to show that. And I think that's the piece where we can say, we're doing great, but what does this data say? Or what does our student growth data say? Does it match like that school that you were visiting? Do they have forward scores that are coming out very soon that are gonna say, yep? So I think that's where.
Well, there's all kinds of
Also-
assessment happening in this.
Also, this in the summer training, everyone's gonna have a very clear rubric to say, how are we doing? Oh, we're over here, we thought we were over here. So the rubric is gonna really, I think, it's gonna be a game changer.
Keith?
I agree with Chris. PLC, they've been around for a long time, probably even before Marshall Flaherty. But one of the things, and I can't speak for elementary because I've never walked in that shoe, but I can secondary. We've had PLCs, and it's a hybrid. It's a group of people. But in this group, you have elective teachers that say, well, now you're core. The core teachers think this is the way to go, and elective teachers don't jump on the same bandwagon as the core teachers do. Then you have your AP teachers who say, you know what, my standards are higher than your standards because I'm the AP teacher. So you have all of these integrated groups coming together. And now it sounds like we want them to all jump on the same bandwagon and follow the same rubrics. But in that high school level, we have the elective teachers who really don't have a lot of relationships with the AP English teachers or the AP Bio teachers. And the AP Bio teachers say, I really don't have a lot to do with Phi-Ed. So you have a lot of disjointed people on this committee. How are we gonna work that so everybody's on the same page?
Since we've had the opportunity to build into the schedule at Lincoln when we changed to a block schedule. So all of our teachers have a prep period, they have a duty period, and then they have a PLC period. So we have much more like-aligned PLCs than we've had in the past. So the algebra team is a PLC, the geometry team is a PLC, the history team is a PLC, and there may be an AP US history teacher on that history team, but David can probably help me if I screw this up or when I screw this up, but so there's much more focused content-based teams. And then our electives, because many of our standards also align skills and skill proficiencies and target proficiencies, our elective teachers are able to look at skill-based work and outcomes for students when they're assessing the effectiveness of their instructional practices. So, the music department maybe occasionally collaborated with the arts department, but those were there was a performance standard that they may be looking at or other skill standards that cross-aligned those elective areas. So it's much more focused. What am I'm probably missing something.
No, you're on the right track. One of the things that I've always brought up when we talk about this, and this is great, first of all, one of the things I see student data to drive instructional decisions and just drive what we're doing curriculum-wise. I want us to make sure that we're also looking what a 5-year-old's brain is ready for. Okay, I know a lot of times our tests are testing what a 5-year-old's brain is not ready for, right? And how do we bridge that gap? Philosophically, I think to be able to know and do are important. But if you don't know why you should care about doing it in the first place, other than being able to do a test, you're going to have kids that shut down, right? So I think somehow we need to continue to build that idea of education just because, not because here's what our test scores show. So I don't know how you do that in the verbiage, but that's a guiding philosophy that we have to have.
I think you're saying developmentally appropriate is the
Okay.
concern that you have. And I think
Yes.
that's something that we could look at adding in here.
Okay. Easy.
Okay, I love the language in here. I mean, we could probably all, there's nothing in here that we aren't going to disagree with. High quality, rigorous instruction, supportive, effective instruction. How are we going to get the buy-in? Who's going to hold all the players responsible for understanding and saying yes to every one of these things? How is that going to be measured, and who's going to be responsible for holding every person out there in these groups accountable to reach this?
I think it's Lee holding Katie and I accountable and us holding the principals accountable. I think at the end of the day, I was a principal for 10 years and I took so much responsibility for what my teachers were doing in the building. Were they doing PLC or not? And we are going to be expecting our principals, they've got a lot on their shoulders. But being an instructional leader is like 75% of their job. And so as an instructional leader, you should know right now, today, if I asked any of our principals, I would want them all to be able to tell me which of their departments are rocking it with PLC and which of them aren't, and what is their plan for those that aren't. And I
Okay,
think
that's the key thing.
Yeah. And I think what we have been missing is this component of this evaluative sort of rubric. It's not for evaluation yet, it is. It's a way for the principals to look on the rubric and say, this is what I'm seeing. They're falling in the developing category. What do I need to do to help move them to this next category? So it is gonna fall on our principals,
Okay,
which is gonna
perfect.
fall on us. And then it's gonna be really ultimately Lee's fault, so.
And I think one thing that you said is really important, it was extremely well thought out in a previous district, is I love hearing from you guys, but I also think it's good for the board to hear from a building principal what they're doing. And tell us as a building principal, not having to come through you guys, that building principal come in meetings and say, what are you doing? How's it working? What are your weak spots? What do we need to do? Here's our growth. Here's our weakness. Here's our strength. But it's not necessarily your job to report to us as much as it is the building principal's job to say, here's our weakness, but here's where we're really growing and this is what I'm doing. Just a suggestion.
So very quick, the rubrics will be included in the 100-day plan, right?
Yep.
And are they going to be a generic rubric for all grade levels? That
It's a rubric that's about, it's not about student learning or student goals. The rubric is about what we see when we're.
the PLC rubric for the teachers involved in, and how are they implementing the PLCs?
It will be the same for every teacher and every department. It's very generically written.
One page,
Yep.
top, middle, bottom.
Proficient, developing, beginning, yep.
Yes.
David, did you have something?
No.
Okay. Anybody else?
I don't know. This is like maybe totally irrelevant, but this is very right. Is it right brained or left brained? This is like, the
Yes. This is yes. Because to run a PLC is an art.
right. I was going to
It's
say,
art.
honestly,
That resides in both sides of your brain. So
I mean-
but the checklist is left brained.
yeah, right.
Okay.
So if we're doing, kind of data analysis on everything, the stuff that doesn't reduce itself to data,
Mhm.
where does that come in? And I guess I would like to make a plug that we have a little sentence in there saying that there should be a wow factor in all of this, because I don't know, I was a very poor student early on in grade school, and the only thing that really awakened me and allowed me to get a decent education was, I'd say, holy shit, that's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, and I think people that teach in the arts, and certainly, you know, I wasn't a social scientist, I was a humanist in teaching history, because I wanted people to have a sense of the wow of being a human being, you know, over a lot of time. And
You can do
that
that in any discipline.
you can do that in any discipline, but I think we're sort of doing, I think we need to have some representation of both hemispheres of the brain. You know, at least in terms of what our goals in education are. I mean, if it's all reducible to an empirical set of formula, wow, that's an intellectual desert in some ways. It's certainly a creative
As
desert in some
someone
ways.
who has observed a lot of teachers, I agree with what you're saying to an extent, but I feel like I've observed some teachers that have their own, every teacher has their own way.
Yeah, sure.
And I've observed teachers who do the elaborate show that gets kids engaged, and sometimes that produces data and sometimes it doesn't. And then you've got some teachers who maybe have a little bit more of a dry delivery who get amazing results.
Yeah,
So I
I
think
couldn't agree more. I mean, you need them both.
we do need both, and I
Yeah.
don't know how we could put that language in here, but we can definitely mull on that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
that comes out of this though, because you
It does.
create relationships. The word vulnerability has to be there. You have to be, I mean, teachers are the only profession that operate in a vacuum. A doctor is gonna cut with 6 other people in the room. A lawyer is practicing in front of everybody else.
Yeah.
Teachers have to learn to be vulnerable. That's up to the principals to make sure that they're okay with being vulnerable. And if you got a principal that has most of their staff not feeling that, you gotta get rid of that principal.
Yeah, well, maybe what I'm.
That's where this stuff comes in. Just hold them accountable that way. Yeah.
But what I like about this is it's clarifying what a PLC is.
Yes.
I mean, as somebody who's, many of us have been on PLCs for years, and there weren't standards, or there wasn't a way, not that we're all gonna teach the same, but there wasn't a way for us to get the information and to come together as a teaching group and do it correctly to get results. Seem more mishmashed at times. So I think some of your concern, if the education improves and the classroom improves, I think those wow moments for kids are gonna come because they'll have more knowledge and they'll
Yeah, I was
start looking
gonna
at things
say,
a little differently rather
The
than.
wow may come after
Yeah.
they learn how to read.
Right, yeah.
You know,
So,
and sometimes we don't do
For
such
an
a good
example,
job.
we have a highly effective science department at the high school who's, I would, put in front of most teams to say, this is what PLC should look like. And what they do is, because they're, they have that art of teaching behind them, so some of them may choose different experiments to teach the same skill. But what you can do then is bring your testing data and say, my kids absolutely sucked at this standard, this question, and Heidi's kids rocked it, and she did a completely different experiment to get them there. So we have the opportunity through the PLC process to talk about maybe what the nuances of her experiment were that mine weren't, that got her kids to be able to demonstrate some proficiency. And that's our music department, when David was there, it was the same. They were just able to, like, how are we getting these skills out of there, and just having great conversations. It doesn't take the art of teaching away, it just
Right.
allows.
So this is basically an infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with anything there. I mean, I think, wow, yeah, it's good that we're finally getting to this. But, there's,
We have the things in place, we need like move the dial to the
Yeah,
next
right.
level.
That's what the 100-day plan will set out for you, is that, we're going down this hole and this hole, but the whole idea is, the vision is this big view of it. And are these the right things? And if they are, then we come back to you and say, well, this is how we plan on getting there. This is what we're gonna do to measure our success, and then bring that back to you to say, okay, here's what it is, and here's what the next plan is.
anything else on number 1?
Thanks for your feedback.
Nice job, Heidi.
Yeah. We're good for number 2?
Let's go to number 2.
All right, and I hope you'll see that there is connection between a lot of these with the systems and things. So number 2 is around district leadership and organizational effectiveness.
Yeah.
And I'll just give you a minute to read that opening paragraph or review it if you have already read it. And then I'll have a couple things and then I'll take comments, questions, and concerns.
Snide remarks.
Sure. So the idea of results orientation and continuous improvement, you saw in a microcosm when we're talking about PLCs, because that's what a PLC is in the classroom for teachers to collaborate. What we're looking at doing is in creating our entire organization into the microcosms of results orientation and what our priorities are, how we organize to achieve those priorities to move us towards the vision. And so what you'll see in this particular one is this means we have to have the right people in the right places, doing the work that we've planned to do, and then holding folks accountable to that. And to me, there's no better accountability than the results. And so this is just primarily a way to show that we want to have, it's important that we have strong leadership in the leadership positions in the district. That comes from the office of superintendent to directors to principals to teacher leaders to our folks in our support staff realm who step up and lead. We have them all over the district. And it's important that we have those. But really it's about this continuous improvement model and the idea of setting measurable goals, reporting out transparently what we're doing with those goals, how we're doing, and then what we're going to do next. And that's what this one's all about. So, comments, questions, concerns about number 2? Yes.
Yeah, is strong leadership, boy, that's, do we know what that is?
Yes,
Do we?
absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Strong leadership, transformational leadership is very clear. The folks need to have, or collectively, we need to have people who are good communicators, who can build others, the capacity of others, who can hold folks accountable to results. These are the components of transformational leadership. Now, how you get that is you have to develop it or you have to hire it, right? Those are the 2 ways you get it there. And so I can give you an example. And again, we're trying not to get too far in the weeds, but just as an example, strong leadership at the district and school levels. One of the exercises that you put me through to get this job was to do the Strength Finder Index. We're having a 2-day workshop with our entire administrative team that they do the Strength Finder from an inside look and then a collective look. Because there's no Superman or woman principals out there that have all 4 of those transformational skills that there depends on. But what we do have are people who are very gifted and talented in each of the different areas. So our job collectively as how we'll collaborate to lead the district is by putting those people in the right place to help make the difference in the areas that they're strong in. So we'll cover for this person who may not be as strong here by putting someone who's strong there to help them. And that would be just an example of how we would do that from a developmental standpoint. But we'll also have goals at each building where we'll have folks. So what you have to understand is this 100-day plan structure isn't just for us to write for the board. It's for principals to write for their building and their goals, and for teachers to write from their perspective on how they're going to get their kids there. Like, it's just a structure that when we're clear about what we want to have as an outcome, and then we have, the accountability is in producing the results. So here are our results. And where are we? Well, sometimes you're not going to meet results, but why didn't we meet the result? What do we have to do differently next time? That's the real crux of it.
Our principals are held to the 6 standards in that CISA. Do strong, or how do we evaluate our principals?
We switched to the Danielson model this
Oh, you
year.
did switch? Okay. So, I mean, to me, back to the rubric, there's your accountability piece, right? And then our directors doing a good job of giving those principals that same kind of feedback, but you're asking your principals to give to your
Correct.
PLC. So I'm harping on the A word tonight, but I think it is, the system exists. Are we using it to the max? And I suspect it would show up in the 100-day plans.
Correct.
Thank you.
David? Anybody else on number 2? That's good. All right.
Number 3, you'll see some crossover and similarities to our conversation about number 1, but this one is all about behavior. So a very hot topic in our district in the last few years. So trying to bring together all of the things that we've been working toward in supporting proactive, positive supports for students, that reducing the negative really narrative that's out there about student behavior in the MPSD, and creating and promoting positive school cultures. So I can give you a moment to take a look at that paragraph.
Yeah, I just want to say I was really pleased with the content here. I came, I've seen this Manawatu Public School District at its very worst. And the people who used to run this outfit, were just so opposed to, social emotional aspect of things. And it always seemed to me that, gosh, we gotta have we have to have the whole human beings in this. Not just like, oh, well, we'll beat you if you don't learn the multiplication tables, which used to be the old method. And at a time when, the psychological aspects of education have become pretty problematic in ways. And I think that there's a very holistic response to that need here.
I like the idea of the restorative practices. I would like to see us, if we are going to do this, to be very, very intentional about teaching people what restorative actually is, because some of the restorative stuff that I've seen is not. Okay. And it actually has no power then, and it becomes a joke. So just pointedly make sure that many people are trained in what that looks like and how to do it.
And that will be a key component in the rollout of our SEL new curriculum.
Okay.
And there's some really good PD that comes with that around restorative practices and exactly what they are. So we can focus on using a couple and getting really good at those for different circumstances. So yeah, I agree. We can call things restorative, but it really is, it requires the practice and a level of understanding and some training. So I'm excited about the PD that comes with that, which will be great.
Yeah.
This seems like it's a warm fuzzy. It's a human element to it. So science brain is saying, how do we measure this? And how do we know which action produced the intended results? It seems like we've already taken some changes since brand new to the board. We've taken and gone the social worker route. So the guy, how do we know that if that's going to be the right answer? Or is it going to be what you were just talking about? I guess somehow in that 100-day plan, I'd ask you to say, how are we going to measure our specific actionable items? I know it's tough because it is an emotional
It's
aspect.
definitely more ambiguous than looking at academic data. Part of our data retreat, though, will be buildings having the opportunity to look at their own internal behavioral data. And we already started some work with our CISA 7 people. So we we came up with some collective commitments about how and what we will be documenting in IC. So there's some consistencies as we're looking district-wide at behavior data. But what buildings will do is they'll be able to look at Infinite Campus and say, all right, inappropriate language was our biggest issue in one of the buildings. So then they'll be able to say, we're going to target inappropriate language in these ways, and we're going to do this proactively. And when a student is using inappropriate language, then we're going to have this level of intervention that the teacher will try first. And then if it continues, we'll go to, so we'll be able to implement that process. And then really buildings will determine what we're looking at in order to evaluate what intervention worked. And if it did work, and if we've reduced the amount of inappropriate language referrals that we're entering in Infinite Campus. So those measurable, it might not be like as specific as 90% of students meet grade level proficiency and whatever, but we could say we're reducing the incidence of this behavior in our building, or we're increasing engagement because we know that we've supported through this way. So it'll be a little bit more general, but there will definitely be measurable metrics, but that's a good point.
Pursue.
And you're right, there's no good rubric that says this kid is less of a jerk than they were.
Yeah.
But we know. What I would say is all the schmozzle you have in here, it's great, okay? But the truth is, you only need the last sentence, where together these initiatives will create an atmosphere where every student can excel academically and socially, leading to a positive impact on the entire school, I would argue the entire community, period.
Really?
Is absolutely what we need to be doing with everything, not just behavior, but everything. So,
And when it
and I
happens,
know that's a big goal of y'all, so.
and when it happens, it's obvious, isn't it?
I give you 50 of the 100 days.
Yeah.
Thank you for the manageable, realistic timeline.
And then I increase your tariffs.
Some of the data is going to be relatively easy. It comes off Infinite Campus. So you can look at your discipline referrals and it's pulled right off Infinite Campus. You can see exactly if it's from teacher to teacher to building to hour to hour. You can compile all that information that's right there for you. So that's.
Yeah, the challenge will be to parse out, it was because of social worker. It was because someone woke up better that morning. You know, I mean, that's the problem.
Somebody had a good breakfast.
Right.
Or you
Well,
can
exactly.
All right there, so, yeah.
That can be it, though, you know, so
So
that's.
absolutely, some of those.
Mary,
I think another point of input, this year, Mike had given a survey a couple times, a staff survey, where they had some pretty loud feedback about
Yeah.
behavior.
For sure.
And I think that kind of input's pretty important and needs to be listened to. So revisiting where their frustrations were, but definitely there were some celebrations as well, staff feeling better about behavior and students' discipline. So I'd ask that that be included in an action plan as well. Like, I think that was through
School perception.
perception.
okay. My big rock, sorry, is, I get this. I've worked with EBD kids and behavior problem kids for 28 years. I get this. I am concerned because through all of that work we're going to do to try to change behaviors and get kids not misbehaving, what are we going to do to stop the things that happen day to day, cause people to go, oh, there's behavior problems at that school. Oh, yeah, I get it, but how do we say if somebody does something that is truly a behavior issue, a problem, something that in the community they would have gotten in a lot of trouble for, how do we say, yeah, we're going to deal with that?
Yes, I
positive
think,
way,
I think there, that's an important piece is there will be those behaviors that we can't predict or we can do lots to mitigate and try to be proactive and teach expectations and put supports in place for kids, but there will be those things that we just can't prevent. And when there is a safety concern, a serious safety issue for that student themselves, a peer, the learning community at large, we do have our student code of conduct that was modified by a team of teacher stakeholders. So there's one specific to the secondary level and one specific to the elementary level because we need to respond in different ways. But we also have implemented, I think, some more consistency in acknowledging that those serious safety issues need to be addressed in a different manner. And, we're working to create some more at-risk programming for students to address those needs and make sure that they have access to more extreme supports than.
I think that's important, and to something Murray was talking about in that survey. I remember some comments from educators saying that it was hard to teach at times because of interruptions. So yeah, I understand all of this, but it's like there has to be, this is the wrong way to say it, but there's got to be a way to stop some of those things while we're working through the process of helping some of these kids heal, in the wrong decision making. Keith.
I totally agree, but if you take a look at what 3 and 4 are doing, I think if you look at number 4, it helps that whole thing. As a building administrator, I never once found where parents were not on my side and wanted their kids to behave and do well in school. No parent really came up to me and said, I don't want you to do anything for my kid, I don't want them to be well. So if we take a look at number 4 in this engagement and this community support, and we're getting the parents and everybody involved, it's like the old circle theory in social work is that wraparound program. If we connect with mom and dad early, as number 4 says, and get that partnership in, it's going to help behaviors. You bring that parent group together and start helping to solve, rather than the constant demeaning and thumb down approach. But it takes an effort. I mean, it takes a lot of work, but I think 4 addresses that support quite well.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is like a kind of a mosaic that becomes very holistic in the end. I mean, each part complements the other, but I think that, in terms of number 3, I don't think we can overemphasize the importance of strong leadership.
Right.
I mean, my kids went to Washington when Wladacek was the principal there, and honestly, it was a wonderful school, I thought. And I think that the evidence, I mean, it's sort of anecdotal, I suppose, to pick on 1 or 2, because the principal that came after her was quite good too. But I do think that the strong leadership thing is really kind of the glue of this whole strategy.
Anything else on this? Moving on.
All right. 4 is communication and engagement. So I'll just give you a minute to look at the paragraph. So the big thing here is that our school district, in my opinion, is the backbone of our community in many, many ways. And the district needs to be in constant communication with that community about what's happening. I think we're reminded all of the time that a vast majority of the citizens and the folks who pay their taxes to fund our school system don't send kids to our school system. And so that's a trust thing. And so in this big rock, what you see is our efforts to strengthen those relationships, both public relationships like intergovernmentally, the city and the county, as well as with nonprofits. The Chamber of Commerce and the Lakeshore, Progress Lakeshore, economic development, that all interconnects. And it's important that the school system is at the table when we get to that piece. It's also important with our family units that we understand a very important point that student achievement of kids is really about them feeling like they belong in our schools, and then that they're actively involved in things outside of learning, like the arts, like sports, like clubs. And so all of these things can become possible when people know and understand what those opportunities are and what impact they're having. And it's our job to communicate that impact with our community and listen to them along the way. So it's a two-way street. So that's the essence of this one. And then I'll take your comments, questions, or concerns.
I see an area for improving communication and transparency, so I appreciate that you included that. I also see an area where the board could improve in that. So would love further discussions or some ideas built into your 100-day plans around the board and how we can support and model that. Mr. Abel's giving me a funny look, but it's probably for another meeting.
Right, it may be something, some of the CISA offerings for functional boards, collaborative boards, maybe entering something like that to make sure we're steering in the, we're learning since so three of us are new, we have a lot to learn. So maybe some of those offerings in that plan.
Sure. Thank you.
I would agree. I learn when I attend the CISA board meetings, there's a lot of things that help a lot of different boards. There should be something we look into.
Obviously,
Yeah.
a lot of opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks for the feedback. Chris?
The only thing I would suggest you think about adding for communication engagement is other educational institutions in our larger community. So that is not just University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, Manitowoc campus, I think is the new official name of it. I think that's also our parochial schools. We want to be in good communication with everybody. That's the other schools in the county, Kiel, Valders, all these guys. You know, it's not, it is not, what are they, the Sharks and the Jets? Did I get them right? Okay, you know, that's not what we're doing here. I think it's really important that we're communicating with everybody. Like LTC, I really would love if we're doing everything we can to make sure not only do we have a good plan for kids that are going to college, but a good plan that slides them right into technical school or wherever else they're going to. So, you know, we're doing that with the youth apprenticeship stuff, but we can do that everywhere. So that's the only reason I say, you know.
That's a great idea. To add on to that, you were saying in the geographical community, but I'd like to extend on that in looking at some of the data from our performance and sorting by size of school district and how are they performing. Things that stuck out to me were to peers. Yes, they probably have a lot stronger financial base, but their scores were also much higher. So what beyond the things we can't control can we communicate and learn from districts our size?
With our demographic.
With our demographic. And I mean, we might have to go outside the state for that because in looking at our size and our demographic.
We have some comments.
Okay.
Yeah, Wisconsin Rapids, Beloit.
Okay.
There are some.
Yeah, that is one of the things with our communication piece. Malcolm Gladwell said the best indicator of what a test score shows is the size of the kid's parents' house.
Yeah, that's probably.
That you can predict better
Yeah.
what that is based on their test score than anything else.
Yeah, that's right.
And our community doesn't understand that because of the way it's presented. So
But,
that's a communication thing.
you know, we were a community that, when I first came to Manitowoc, honestly, I was just stunned by how, you know, positive people in this community were to the school system. I mean, you know, it ranked very high. The teachers were
It's a
highly
different demographic
regarded.
back then.
And
Vastly
certainly
different
even, you know, even before Ron Rubik, won 3 state championships, people were really into the Manitowoc Public Schools. And I think that's fallen off for a lot of reasons, demographic and economic and a lot of other things. But the fact of the matter is that we need to be really inclusive, I think. And Pump the positive stuff for sure, but also share the concerns as well.
We had a discussion this week about a situation that sometimes I wonder if our staff understands that community relationship that we need to have. We share things with the community that we have, be it our auditorium if they need it, be it our athletic fields. And I think sometimes we need to set that out as an example and get that out there. I'm not sure why I get those phone calls, but I do. And those are things that I think sometimes we have some nice facilities. We have some old facilities. We have some nice things that we have that other places don't have. And we have to learn that, hey, it's taxpayers in the complete district that are funding those things. It's not our kids and our parents. And just to help maybe clarify that with some of our staff. Anything else? Oh, we can move on to number 5.
Fiscal responsibility and resource management. Again, just a minute, 2 minutes.
Well, there isn't much of that this time. I mean,
It got dry.
The idea with this is that we use the resources we have, which are people, money, and time, to the maximum to get the best results. And I think there's opportunities for us within this big rock to develop some systems that we use to clarify what our priorities are and how they relate to our budgeting and the tools that we are bringing in for our teachers and the staff development. It's all really aligned. The people and money and time, though, are necessary to complete all these other things that we're talking about. So it's very important. Some of the strongest districts in the state have actually developed, talking about rubrics, how spending, how does it relate? If it doesn't relate to what's on this paper, then why are we doing it? Those kind of conversations. And I think as we dive into that with this, we're going to be working with a new administrator in there. I think we provide some opportunities for that person to understand that our vision is to go in a direction where our priorities are what we're focused on, and sometimes hard decisions have to be made. And when they do, we come back to this. We come back to where we're trying to go to make those decisions. And that's really what this one's all about, as well as trying to secure funding sources outside of our normal funding sources. Our team has done an incredible job of looking at things outside of the district over the last couple of years. We've received a community grant, a recovery high school grant. We've had other grants that we've received through the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, and we have to continue to do those things. But really, it's making sure that our monies and our spending of our monies align with our priorities and that we're looking to get the best results from that. That's what this one's all about.
Yeah.
Are in this, considering, the community, our customers, our funding source, we're seeing in the state these referenda, we have to finance by referendum.
Yeah.
And I think in sharing some of these things, when I got questions, just as a candidate, how do we communicate back to the number 4 above? How do we communicate very simply? What does this mean to the taxpayer? And I gave them a little chart that said this will how have the board had committed to not increasing the tax base, and this is how. That simple of a communication so somebody can share with their neighbor, because I'm trying to learn the fund numbers and all of these things, and they're very big. There's a lot to it. It's not a P&L like a business like I'm used to seeing, agencies that are different. So how do we, and maybe including that in number 5, that communication tie to make sure that we are serving our customers, having that conscience, and are being fiscally responsible.
I think this will probably go into the 100-day plans, but that's also where I think you started doing a good job of explaining the why. Because the state has not been funding us at what they said they were going to for the past 20 years. Because the state did not keep up with inflation, we have to have those words as well. Non-judgmental, but here's the truth.
Yes.
It's the why, but it's also the difference this year with the referendum of saying we're going to be fiscally responsible. We went through the budget, you found savings that we were able to tell the taxpayers, this is the why, this is what it's for. But we're going to use your tax dollars the right way, save the money, so you're not going to see a 40% increase as you saw 2 years, 2 years. And those kind of things, that responsibility helps the district. We have things we have to fix.
Yeah.
And if we're responsible, taxpayers are going to go, hey, they're using my money. Right.
Is there our support?
Yeah. Keith.
Going along with what Ann said, Manitowoc is not a community that always clicks into the MPSD website. We need to communicate through Seahafer, we need to communicate through the Herald Times, we need to communicate through WMT. There's people that use every one of those medias to their level of knowledge. So we just can't rely on one source of getting that information out. It has got to be every source available. Many people in my community that listen to that radio and they'll come after the radio show and say, hey, I just heard. Or I just read it on Seahafer. They need that because they're not all clicking into the computer. They gotta have, we can't just rely on MPSD website to convey our messages. It's gotta be multifaceted.
Yes, I've communicated mostly when people were asking me questions, forwarding the Facebook pages that said this. It's the easiest way for me to answer a lot of questions was to say, hey, look at this communication from MPSD.
Yeah. Changing topic just slightly, but still on number 5. I was rereading this for something about a long range approach as well.
Yeah.
And I'm maybe skipping ahead to number 7 a little bit, but we kind of got ourselves into that referendum situation because we weren't, right?
Correct.
And that's specific to facilities, but there are other areas of the budget where you as the superintendent and the business director always are looking out. Rather than the roof has a leak, what do we do today? But we're not thinking about 5 years from now.
Correct, long range.
A 30-year plan for facilities isn't unusual in districts. 146 requires a 10-year plan. And it was hard for the community to understand. They kept asking, well, what is the plan? And it's hard when that hasn't been built in the past for us to say, well, here it is, right? So I think you're kind of building these planning while it's in the air. So I think at least something in number 5, and perhaps it'll come in the 100-day plans. But there might be a mention of something more long range.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? 6.
Mr. Knoll, it gives me a chance to excuse myself for a second.
All right.
Second.
When I read attracting, recruiting, hiring, and retaining quality staff, I might be a little biased because I'm the HR guy, but it seems to me that that's probably the most important thing we do. Because at the end of the day, if we hire in teachers loaded with teacher talent, we hire in quality, skilled employees, that sort of thing, the organization is going to flourish. And if we miscue on those pieces, obviously too often, the organization is going to flounder a little bit. Studies show that the reputation of the school district is the primary, most important thing relative to attracting and recruiting people. And frankly, I experienced that here because in the last couple of years, I had a couple of people that I was trying to seal a deal with, as I would call it, right? And there was some hesitation. And so I'm hoping that we're over that hill. And moving in a different direction. The other thing relative to attracting and recruiting is that if our current employees feel good about being here, the word of mouth, when you're at the YMCA and church function and festivals, you name it, family gatherings, if they feel good about the organization and people start talking about it, they're going to be talking about it. If there's a position out there that they think they might be a good fit for, they might even encourage them to apply. So that's really important. We do use, for our posting and advertising, we do use the Wisconsin Educated Career Access Network. That's been in the state now probably 2 decades. But that's primarily the teacher resource for advertising and that sort of thing with teachers. We use Indeed with our support staff. Our support staff they don't really use LinkedIn. They're not familiar with it, but Indeed, they're very familiar with it. And with Indeed, we get a tremendous number of applicants. Here's the glitch to it though. We might have a position, a support position, special education, para position, let's say. We might get 25 applicants in a very timely manner. However, when we look through the backgrounds quickly and stuff like that, it doesn't take long, 40 to 25, and maybe we have 5 that we're maybe interested in. But at least we have some candidates, and Indeed it works well for us with that. The other thing relative to recruiting and attracting, you got to have connections with our universities. And we are connected with Lakeland, we are connected with UWGB and Oshkosh pretty tight. I work closely there with John Yang out of Lakeland and Corey Baker, our GB, and stuff like that. The other thing is we get an opportunity to have a student teacher. We jump on it because we can bring, typically if someone wants a student teacher in Manitowoc, they're from the northeast side of the state, sometimes right from the city of Manitowoc, right here. They were born and raised here. So if we get a chance to have a student teacher, we jump at that because that's an opportunity. If they do well, that's an opportunity possibly to move forward with a good hire. We also have done quite a few times some interns, and we do the same thing with the interns. It's an alternative to student teaching. You pay a little sum of money. David's familiar with the situation we did with vocal choral music a couple of years ago. We also recruit out of the country. The Philippines, right? We have Jolyn, math teacher at Wilson, has done very well, very well. And so Jolyn's here with us, and her husband came in October, November, Giovanni, and he's working as a custodian. They're doing very well. They're going to bring their daughter over for next year, and their J1s and J2s have been approved. It's all good. So just a really really nice story, really success type of story. As you're well aware, we have used Elevate K-12, we have used Burgess, and I don't envision Elevate K-12 at all next year. And Burgess, maybe not also, but who knows? It's June, we got June, July to go in, so that type of thing. Relative to hiring, I truly do believe hiring is the most important thing we do. It's a process. And I've kind of heard this tonight, hiring is not a perfect science. There's no doubt about it. But the better we do with the process, the more likely we're going to get who we think we're going to get, right? And that process of hiring is from the posting and advertising to the screening to the interviewing to the checking the references and that sort of stuff. But once again, the better we do in that process, the more likely we're going to get who we think we're going to get, what we envision we're going to get. And then just a little bit about retention. And retention does cross a lot of these areas because at the end of the day, the building principals, the central office leadership, and our Board of Education, we all need to make sure that our staff have a sense of belonging. They feel valued. They feel listened to. They like coming to work and all those types of things. Because that really is the number one thing to retention is people wanting to come to work here and feeling good about being here, that type of thing. And the other thing relative to those pieces is we also have to have compensation structures that are competitive. And I think we all agree to some of that. And I kind of leave it like this. We want to be an organization that takes care of its employees. Because I've said this numerous times to our principals, if we take care of our people will take care of us. So just some thoughts on those areas. I don't know what your thoughts are, but willing to listen and share.
Questions,
I
comments?
sound like a broken record for each of these.
Okay.
But in the 100-day plans, what are our metrics and how do we know we're succeeding? So where are we getting the data from? Is it, is it our exit for retention? Is it our exit interviews? What are the trends? Have we done a Pareto on why people are leaving? Those are the things that keep coming up in my head as I'm reading this that I would like to see in the 100-day plans. How do we know that our changes are working? Do a lot of stuff, keep what works, and how do we know what is working?
Yeah.
I just have one comment for Mike in his work. It is the most important part, Mike. I agree with you. Number 6, I'd love to see the word onboarding included. The research says that successful onboarding would lead to that retention.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And what are we doing, especially as we're looking at Act 20 and new reading curriculum, learning that bridges math, and how do we onboard a new teacher in that? But also other areas. How do we onboard a new custodian? How do we onboard a new food service person? Making them feel like they belong, but also confident in their jobs is pretty important. And I think the other part of that for all of our staff is, again, that feedback loop. With our teachers, it's Danielson and here. But where are the other pieces and accountability that we're giving them the feedback that they need to truly be that excellent employee, that high quality employee? So I think that's already in the work you do, Mike. I'm just asking for it to be called out.
Yeah, there's a mentor system, right? I mean, we have a mentor system that ought to be kind of an encouraging, let me help you out and you're doing really well. I mean, I think that as a new teacher, and I think we're destined to be looking for a lot of new teachers, to really reassure them, have relationships with inside, to really reassure them that, gosh, you're doing really well, but let me give you a hint. I mean, this maybe you're working too hard at this, but to be very encouraging and to reassure people. It's a kind of it's a very subjective kind of profession. Like you said, it's sort of teachers work on their own. I think David said that, and you can't let that be the case for new teachers. I think an onboarding is really good because I know when I started, they gave me the key and said your office is down the hall, and I thought, holy geez, well, no welcome or no, et cetera, but.
Yeah, we get a file.
I lost it right away.
I didn't get a fob. I was the only one that didn't take it.
Anything else for Michael? Thank you.
Number 7, operations and infrastructure, Mike.
Oh, this one, it's not as vague, I guess. That's why I like my area here.
Yeah.
The next few years, what we're working on right now with the various committees, staff committees and community committees, trying to work together to come up with a plan for our entire district, to right-size our buildings and all of that sort of thing. So,
But you're not doing it in a vacuum, like we were a couple of years ago.
true.
You know.
And as we move along with some of these meetings with our Michael Hacker and that stuff, you can tell that the community is becoming more well aware of what's going on around here. A lot less opposition, and they're just in tune with what's going on and coming up with the ideas where we need to be. You can sense that out there.
That's really good, yeah.
I was telling Lee before the meeting yesterday, 2 gentlemen on different poles Okay, one of them asked me to let him know when we were going to build a new high school so he could sell his house near the old high school because there'll be riots. And he was very honest in
That's
saying,
true.
the community, how are you gonna sell the community on that? The other gentleman said, when are we gonna move the high school out to Waldo Boulevard across the interstate, so the city grows that way and the city will give us money and MPU will give us money. So I think we have to do a really good educational job on how this is going to happen if we want it to be successful. I think that was a problem with the original. There was no education. It was, this is what we're doing. And there was a revolt among a lot of people in the community because they didn't understand the why. So that committee, this has to be thought out and it has to be laid out so the community understands what we're doing. And that's,
I think that kind of showed in the referendum that we went through, the process
right.
that Lee went through, a lot of people, and it passed successfully because everybody knew what was going on, where we were heading.
Yeah, and the communication piece and the way that it's communicated can create excitement or fear. And we have to create excitement for whatever we all decide is going to happen, right? But speaking to the point of the iconography of Lincoln, I love that my kids graduated from there, but in the past few years, I had many, many kids saying, when are we getting rid of this piece of,
Yeah.
as water is wafting through the windows, you know?
Treat it that way right now.
Right, right.
Kids will treat with
Yeah,
respect facilities that they can be proud of, and that's
Yeah.
just not the case in that building right now.
Yeah. Mhm.
And also this rock speaks to the operational functioning of the district and the systems around that. I think there's probably things that we do here that we've just done because we've done them that way for 30 years. And I think we have to have systems in place where we're taking a look at some of those things. We do it this way. Is there speaking of collaborating with other districts, how do they handle that over here? Are there other operational savings we can make? Tying number 7, as Mary suggested before, really to number 5, in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And how to do that too.
Yeah.
There has to be enough money in maintenance. Fixing buildings, and we haven't done that
Yep.
because of funding, but
Yeah, so the 100-day plan segments, correct me if I'm wrong, for certain ones that are more fiscally based, we should see some numbers or some target dates to, hey, we need to have the decision of D-Squad to ensure that we're spending the right money in the right schools.
Correct.
That's going to be a little more hard numbers. Those metrics, I'm not as, but that's what I would expect.
Well, and the key idea with the 100-day plans are, if you want to think of it like this is where we want to be here, right? The 100-day plans, remember, there's going to be a lot of 100-day plans to get to 3 to 5 years, right? So here we are, this is where we want to be. The first 100-day plan is going to be what we bite off and chew to get to this part, and then to this part. And so what this team has done is thought through some of that already, right? Like, okay, well, this would have to happen, order of operations, what has to happen first? How do we lay the groundwork for this? And many of those things are the systems and how we do that and monitor it and the success. So the goal would be that we take each of these now, go back, write those plans, come to the committees. Everyone around this table knows, understands where we want to go. We'll make the adjustments to this document that were suggested here tonight and bring it back. Well, once we do this, it's go team go. And then when those 100-day plans come back, you'll be able to evaluate those and hold us accountable for what those plans are in relationship to where we're going to go. And you might look at it and go, well, if this is our goal, then why are you doing this? And we should be able to tell you that this is the way, this is why we think this has to be done first. But that dialogue is so critical because ideas come up. You all know the community. Most of you have been around here for a while. You understand, and you hear from the community more so than I do on a lot of things. And so that's why that dialogue is really helpful and critical in the detail. They always say the devil's in the details. Well, that's what the 100-day plans are.
With that 100-day plan, back to Mary's point, are there going to be bullets on, these are the next steps that we have to get to get to the long-term strategic plan?
Correct. That's what those are.
And who's accountable for
Yes, and who's.
Correct.
at a time. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I think.
We have a template that we'll use. And then we also have a template for what our 100-day report looks like. And then, I'd like to just tie that 100-day report to the next, we shouldn't need to wait a month in between a 100-day report and the next 100-day plan. That should be all taking place at one time. Yeah.
I appreciate the work of the directors
Yes.
and the superintendent
Absolutely.
to get to the direct point here.
Yes. It's very nice.
Exciting work.
Well, we
Yes.
really appreciate
Yeah,
the dialogue.
I just want to say that the final sentence, while I called out, I think, what was it, number 3? I called it out number 3. The final sentence, every one of these sums everything up without bullet points, without a big, I understand why the big narrative and everything's in there, but really, everything is nutshell, which is really nice in those last things. So if you want clarity, it's all right there. I don't know if that was all one person or you all
This
committed
was
to
all
making that
collaborative.
work. Okay,
All collaborative.
good job. Well written.
Very nicely done.
The English teacher in me says, you all get
Anything else on 1 through 7?
I did have a friend who talked to me who had served on a school board in a different area, and they said, what is our plan when people start coming at us for using certain words? For example, equity. Do we have some sort of plan of how we're going to address that? Well, I'm sorry, and my jerkish self says, well, I'm sorry you've been corrupted or that word's been corrupted for you, but here's what it means to us. So I think that's something that in the communication, I don't know that it'll come up.
We were aware.
Okay, okay. Inclusiveness.
Yes.
Yep. Mhm.
Acceptance,
Okay.
a rare word.
I think, in the context in which they're used, if we don't use those words specifically, then we're saying that we're okay with exclusive practices or uninclusive environments, so, it has, just about what's best for all kids. That tends to be something that.
Now we can go like Harvard.
Yep.
All kids,
Well,
Chris.
everywhere in here, where one of these words that some people have a moronic knee-jerk reaction to it, there's no dog whistling in this document. The words are used appropriately where they're used, and they're used justifiably. I would absolutely discourage using any words in an attempt to curry favor with one political perspective or the other, because it's a working document that's based on reason. So
And I 100% agree with that. I just want us to be
And do they
prepared.
align
I just
with
don't want a list of words we can't use.
Right.
kind of align with law, procedure, process in our state statutes? As long as they do, then those words should still be able to be used in the context.
Correct.
Mary, you had something? You had that look like,
I was just wondering about next meeting.
that's what we need to talk about next meeting dates. There's
Yep, so we have our,
I think the school board meeting.
we have our 2 committees, policy and personnel are meeting next week, Tuesday. Are we doing 4? Did we say we're gonna move it to 4 or are we doing
I
3:30?
think we did 4, right? What do you remember what you put down?
Because I think we said there's too long of a gap
Yeah, I
between
thought
the
it was
two.
4 o'clock.
It's 4, we changed it, so.
Yep, and then 5 o'clock for curriculum on Tuesday.
Personnel policy is June 3rd, I thought.
Okay.
Yep,
So,
June 3rd?
yep.
Okay.
if you
4 and
can't
5.
make your committee meeting, let me know and then I will go ahead.
Hey, who do,
We don't have finance and
No,
facilities.
not up there yet.
So the
The
30th.
30th of June.
Thank you.
And what is?
so we meet with, the
So
first
finance
policy and personnel.
30th of June.
Looks like
It's
curriculum's
here.
at 5.
We meet with, Mike.
Yeah, he'll set up
At
something.
5.
Maybe Ruby.
Ruby will send the policies to.
Oh, yeah, they've already been sent out.
I know they've been sent out.
Yeah,
Curriculum is when?
June 3rd at 5.
June 3rd at 5.
Personnel is at what?
4.
But wait, are we, at our next committee meetings, can we just talk about the times that they are, and if there are times that work for the committee to meet?
That's what we did the last time. Everybody said it was okay to do the first Tuesday.
We're talking
Like
time of
starting
day.
like
Oh.
5
Like,
p.m.
You know, if there's flexibility with the team, but are available to have a daytime meeting, that we could make those changes committee by committee.
It's up to the committee chairs.
Well,
We could do
I
that.
think it would be great for the committees to have these discussions with.
Let's do that at our
Okay.
next meeting.
All right.
I'm all in favor.
I think we tied those two close together because of the
There's
members of the
overlap.
different committees.
I love that you tried to make a motion. That really cheered me.
Curriculum is it. Curriculum is it.
Talk about that within your committee.
Yep, committee's decision.
I am amiable because I know a lot of people stay after their work days, and I do have the Friday off, so other people, if Fridays would work better for finance and facilities.
I don't know,
I didn't do that.
Ann was saying that she has Fridays off, and if Fridays work better for finance facilities, it could be earlier in the day.
The 28th,
No, just at the Friday instead of a Thursday meeting.
where's the 30th? That's
That's a Friday?
No,
Thursday.
any Friday.
Any Friday, moving them.
Moving to Friday.
You two have a chat later.
Yeah.
What is the 30th?
It's a Thursday.
Is it Thursday?
I thought so.
No, I think it's
The
Friday.
It
committee.
should be a Thursday at 5,
Yeah.
is what we had originally
And
agreed
what
on for
day?
finance and facility.
She's doing on Friday. She can.
You can bring that up in the committee.
Thursday,
Sorry,
the
I've
what?
been bringing it.
Oh, no, we said we were gonna do the 30th though.
That's
The
a Monday.
The Monday. Yeah, because folks are out of town. Folks are out of town. We have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is, Monday is the
The
5.
fourth,
Yeah.
the fourth Tuesday or
Interesting, isn't
the
it?
fourth Thursday is the June.
We're out of town. Keith's out of town, I'm out of town, we're all out of town. So he talked about moving it today to Monday, the 30th,
Okay.
if it worked
I did that about 8:30 this morning.
at 5.
It would have to be at 5, and that would be the absolute soonest. That I
Does it
could
help
get here.
5:15 help?
It might, 5 should be okay.
Okay.
You guys could do all this after we adjourn.
All right. That's true.
All right.
Thank you, sorry for confusing everybody on.
Anything else?
We have the quarter century
Yeah.
requirement. And then some of us, I think, are reading on Jackson
Oh, yeah.
on Thursdays,
McKinley's graduation is when?
June 5th.
June 5th.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time of the year.
Lincoln is 13th, right?
Yes.
So logistics on that, if I was a maybe because of work schedule, busy day, am I allowed to just show up?
Yeah. On the McKinley one, you're saying?
No, on
Lincoln?
the retirement,
Oh, tomorrow? Oh, sure.
Yeah, they already said it's.
Why don't you bring it back?
yes.
There's already a notice.
We're good. We noticed all those.
Learning
things.
curve.
Where are you back?
Motion to adjourn?
Got a motion for second?
Second, third.
Stole my motion.
I never got it.
All those in favor?
Because you're not a sheriff, buddy. That's good. You're the new sheriff. I've never got one.
Second, and everybody said aye.